All right. Good morning. How's it going?
I'm good, Dr. Imani Price. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Dr. Shavette Alston. We're so funny.
So I think today's topic is how to find the right therapist for counseling. And
Yes.
that's really important.
Yes, it is.
I think choosing a good therapist is like choosing good shoes. When you
It
go out
really-
shopping, like I know the shoes I'm looking for, but you go to several stores and you try different ones on before because your feet are important, right? They support your whole body. Choosing a good therapist is like choosing that support for your body, but it's for your mind.
it really is. And I think that for some people, because you hear some of the horror stories of people who have actually gone to therapy and the therapist either was not engaged or they didn't appear to know what they were doing or they didn't feel like a right fit in some ways, it may scare people off from seeking therapy or scare those people off from going back and trying it again. So I think that if we help to give some basic guidelines of what to look for when doing this search, it will make the process less scary for individuals who are thinking about it. And ultimately, that's what we want. We want people to seek counseling if they need it and to be informed about the best way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think let's go over some things that people should, I guess, look for when they're seeking therapy or seeking a therapist or a counselor.
Okay. So I would say one of the big things is to look at the credentials and the experience.
Yes.
So, for many people, regardless if it's a referral from your insurance company or word of mouth, most providers have a website with their bio. I think it's
Right.
really important for people to read the bios of the therapist and get a sense of who they are, what they've done in the past, and if they can possibly support what you're going to be bringing to counseling.
Right. I think within those referrals, people tend to go with the first one that the company sends to them. But again, to look around and look at the credentials and go to the website and read those bios to see if you have common interest or the person specializes in your field or has credentials there. That's really important to get a good fit for your future therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I know that for people that I've talked to, of course, I work with a lot of trauma and a lot of military or people who have had just traumatic experiences. I'm always encouraging people when they're doing their search, because, I may be seeing them just to do their disability claims, but when they're doing their search for a therapist, make sure that they have trauma experience
Hmm.
and and that's one of the things that not everyone can do.
Right.
We do a lot of that in our practice because of our population that we see, but many people do not have that experience, and I think that it's important. And even within the trauma experience, there are so many different modalities, which goes into our next point: therapeutic approach, and looking for a person who has a therapeutic approach that may be right for you. And I want to bring up one of your signature ones, EMDR, which is now getting more and more information is getting out into the public about EMDR, and that's something that you specialize and also teach. Can you talk a little bit about therapeutic approaches and EMDR and how that sort of fits in with what a person may be looking for, especially if they have trauma in their history?
Sure. EMDR, I like to call it a way of processing without the person having to go into great detail. And so it involves, if you're in an office, you can use what's called clickers, and you hold them in your hand. Or they
Mm-hmm.
use what's called a light bar. And it looks kind of hokey, but it does work. If it's online, we use what's called bilateral stimulation, and I'll send the person a link, and we use a dot that the person follows. And you go back to your furthest or your earliest distress or trauma, and then we begin to process or move forward from there. And it's very interesting how your brain begins to fill in things and integrate, your history, so that it's not that it didn't happen. You know that it happened, but the visceral part of it, or the reaction you have to it, kind of fades, because you know it happens, but for some reason processing and coming through helps the person kind of deal with, or come to terms with what's happened, and then beginning to move forward. And EMDR you can use, you combine with therapy, CBT, DBT, but that one by itself is very good for addressing trauma. And I like it because the person doesn't have to go into great detail about this is what happened, this is what time it happened, or we don't have to have an exact timeline. Your brain will process for you those things that stand out. Those things that don't stand out, but begin to integrate those too.
And as I was doing my training and learning it, one of the things that came out, or what the instructor was talking about, is that oftentimes when traumatic things happen, we don't fully process it. So there are all of these things that help to trigger, or that may trigger us. And that image or that memory comes right up, and it feels like we are in it again. So when you're doing EMDR with people and you were talking about the processing, it helps them to process it so that they can recognize that it's a memory. It's something that happened. It happened in the past, and now they can get centered and grounded in what's happening right here.
And it sometimes explains to people why that thing, why gummy bears, why don't I like gummy bears? And it's because it's connected to something that happened to you in the past. But until you, again, begin to process those things, and it'll fall into places like magic. It falls into place, because it's connected to this memory or this event. And that's why that thing that I never really understood bothers me. And understanding that, again, it's not that the event didn't happen, but you begin to understand, and you can move forward better, in a better way, about why or what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some of the big things that people might have heard of, and I think you said it earlier, was CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. We do a lot of that DBT, trying to help people to learn how to do self-soothing, which we may see with individuals who have some level of personality disorder, or just also had some traumatic event and needing to learn how to work their way through it in a way that's loving and kind to themselves. So we talk about the self-soothing and what that might look like.
I think it's important also, we don't have a lot of young adults or kids, but play therapy, registered play therapists who have been through the training and know those individuals that side adults sitting down and having adult conversations, because sometimes kids can't do that. And so play therapists are really important for people who have children that need therapy.
What are I work with adults. What are some of the things that people do in play therapy? The therapists will do with kids in particular. I know I've seen some of the therapists at our practice work with teenagers, but what are some of the things that therapists might do with younger kids with play therapy?
Play therapy, it's a big word. So there may be sand trays, there may be costumes or dress ups, there may be little figurines or action figures or dolls where the person can kind of tell a story. Kids kind of play and they process when they play with things. You can sit there and observe and listen to the dialogue that they have, or watch how they interact with some of the figurines or the dolls. Or when they choose a costume, have them describe why or who they are. You get so much information because it's not just sitting and talking, it's watching a child engage in something that comes natural for their age. But for the play therapist, knowing how to process that information is going to be really important. So they go through a lot of training. It's very extensive. And they have their supervisors, just like with EMDR, they come through a supervisor. And then once they are finished with their training, they become registered play therapists. And that's really important for the parent to look for.
That's fantastic. I mean, some of the things that I've seen our therapists do with some of the teens, I've seen them put together song lists, things that helps them to feel empowered, or things that helps them to feel joy, or whatever emotion it is that the therapist and the teen is working through. They have them put together a playlist for that. I've seen them do poetry, write stories. I've seen them do dance, which I thought was so interesting. If you were in whatever situation that feels, safe and calm, what would your dance look like? So just really, there's so much creativity that can happen in a therapy session, depending on the therapeutic approach that the therapist has. And I think that's important for us also, because it's not just sitting and talking.
Right.
Sometimes people are doing things that are creative. Of course, there's meditation. I'm thinking about me with my adults. There's meditation. I always like them to do journaling. Sometimes we write stories. Sometimes we rewrite our narrative. The narrative that's in our mind might be that everything in the world is traumatic, but our new narrative will say something that's much more positive and help move people in that direction towards the more positive. Writing 5 things at the end of the day to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. I also have people do that. So therapeutic approach, so many ways. It's more than just sitting and talking. And I know our colleague Leon loves homework of all kinds of, in all kinds of ways. And I do a lot of cognitive processing therapy with our individuals with trauma, and that does, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of processing what happened, and trying to move through those stuck points. As most people who have experienced something, they're stuck where that trauma is, where the EMDR helps them to process it and move through it. Cognitive processing therapy is another way of processing and kind of moving through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
hypnotherapy, but you have to. There's a certain level of trust you have to have with hypnotherapy. Mm-hmm. So that's a way of approach, but it's not as hocus pocus as people think it is. It's more about relaxation, which again is another intervention that we all use when it comes to a person or grounding them when they have panic attacks.
That mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, and this will seem like, my third point seems like a no-brainer, but personality and compatibility. Everybody's not for everybody. Everybody's not for you.
You find someone they're not good fit for you, it's okay to leave that person and go to someone else. It's all about you and not about hurting that person's feelings.
Yes. Our feelings will not be hurt if you decide that we're not for you. Our approach is not for you. Our personality is not for you. Whatever it is that feels like it is not for you, then pay attention to that, because as therapists, our ultimate goal is to help you in your healing. That's what we want. And if it doesn't appear that whatever therapist you're working for is the right person to help you with your healing journey, then yes, it's okay to leave and find somebody else and ask the questions of what's their approach. How do they work with, individuals who have XYZ, and do one session and just see if the personalities fit.
Mm-hmm. And not all people are alike. We as Christian therapists with Christianity in our foundation, people just think that I have to have a certain faith, and you really don't.
Yes.
Sometimes people ask for you to pray, and some people don't want to know about it. And so we're not force it on you. So if you see it in the bio, it's okay to ask that person or tell that person, I don't want any kind of, and that's okay. We'll be okay. It's more again about that person, their healing, whatever the journey is, and if we have a good mesh in our training and in our approach and in how we speak or interrelate with the person, then look for those things because it's your journey. It's not up to us as far as trying to make a good fit. It's
Yeah.
how you the world.
Yes, absolutely. And some people are more structured than others in their personality and their approach. Some therapists are much more by the book. Some therapists may be much more let's build this relationship that might feel kind of collegial as opposed to the power differential that can happen. There are so many things that therapist and our potential client brings into a session. And it's important that we pay attention. Building a therapeutic alliance is one of the most important things that happens in counseling.
Yes. That's the foundation. If you don't, it's like any good relationship. If you don't have that, then you got nothing. You're not going to move anywhere. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to think that again, like he opened with, that therapy is not a good thing for you, and you'll walk away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we said before, if you try someone out and it doesn't feel like a good fit, you have every right and should consider someone else. Now, don't not go to therapy. Just
Right.
consider someone else because we are not all the same. We're very different. And then, of course, the logistics. Everybody knows their own availability. Everybody knows if they prefer in session or video sessions. People know what locations are most convenient for you. All of those things matter. So when you're calling and looking for a therapist, if they have a great bio and you're willing to see if the personalities fit, also check on those things that are going to help you be most consistent in being able to get to therapy. And that's all the logistical things. You want to add anything to that?
I think no. If you know you're not a morning person, don't schedule your appointment in the morning. Or if you know you're not a timely person, whether it's online or whether it's in person, don't schedule the appointment when you're busy or you have a lot going on because it's going to be fighting for control of when you go. Or um, if you can't travel or if you're in a rural area, maybe online, if you have a plethora of will be better for you versus going into an office. So those logistics of making your environment right, not just the personality fit, but making your environment so that you can
Absolutely.
pay focus on your therapy is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And um, the last point for about finding a good therapist is that many counseling offices will allow for an initial session.
Mm-hmm.
So individuals, if you're not sure or if you want to see how it works out, call and see if you can get that initial session. It might be 10 minutes, 15. Some people will do 30 minutes free to allow people to see if this will fit or work out for them. Look for those opportunities also, if that will help you to feel much more comfortable in making a decision about if this is going to be the right person, the right logistics, the right everything therapeutic alliance for you.
Mm-hmm. It
Agree.
really is with like trying on a pair of shoes. You go in, you try them on, you walk them around, you look in the mirror, see if you imagine the outfit. If you find a good person and that initial conversation is good, then that's usually a good indication that this may be a good relationship, a therapeutic relationship for you. If you find that you are reluctant to speak or you don't like the person's vibe or the person's trying to force their theology or their ideology down your throat, then maybe that's not a good fit for you. That's too tight. You feel restricted, and so you feel like running. Maybe not the best therapist for you.
Yeah, if you feel like running, you need to get out of there. You also can end the session early.
Right.
So we want you to be empowered. If you're in a session, it is not working out. It is okay to say, okay, thank you. I've figured out all that I need to figure out. I was here to see if this was going to work, if this was the right fit. I don't quite think this is the right fit. So I appreciate your time, but I'll keep looking for the right therapist for what I need, my needs are. Yeah,
and that's okay. You're not gonna hurt anybody's feelings.
it is.
I saying we're not a good fit. Yeah.
Yes. So I want to transition a little bit into that initial counseling session. So whether you're going for just the consultation or you're going for your actual intake first session counseling, you can expect that you likely have anxiety. Having anxiety about going to the session is okay, and we expect it.
Mm-hmm. It's a stranger, and you're about to share, the deepest, most personal parts of your life. Hopefully, you're gonna honestly, with that person. And so, if you're reluctant, if you're nervous, if you're anxious, if you are a little afraid, that's almost like a blind date. You don't really know what you're going to get till you show up. You kind of interact with each other, and over time, if it's a good fit, you'll find it's easy to relax. You'll find you want to open up to the person because you have established a good rapport. But again, if you have not, if you still feel tight or wound up after meeting with that person, pay attention to your signs.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's okay if you don't have a good fit. That's the purpose of that initial session. I think people need to understand they have more control in therapy than they really think they have. We're not there to kind of like tell you what to do. It's to get your information in truth and honesty, so we can get all the ingredients that compromise you, so we can work with the you to become a better you or evolve that. But
absolutely,
not if it's not good logistics. If your intake you didn't give all the information, if you're worried about trying to impress the person or them being shocked by what you're going to say, that'll hold you back, and then it's not a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we as therapists expect people to feel some level of anxiety, nervousness when they come in. So back to building that therapeutic alliance. One of the things that we should be doing as therapists is helping you to feel a lot more comfortable when you're coming in, knowing that you're about to tell someone that you have never met before the most important and intimate things about your life. And you have to be able to trust them. And you have to know that or believe that they can help you. So yes, we should be building that with you. So the initial session, we may ask a lot of questions, but I think that a good therapist also stops to listen and allow the client to process what they're feeling, sharing all that information.
Right. In that initial session, I think people are reluctant with their intimate details, and that's expected.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give everything, but you can give an indication that you have something in your history, maybe sexual trauma or maybe physical abuse or maybe even substance or alcohol abuse. You don't have to go into great detail in that session. We have plenty of time in our therapeutic relationship to get the depth of the information. But in that initial session, it's really important to get as much detail so we can kind of begin to map either your diagnosis or the treatment or even you as a person. But that information is needed, not as intimate, but it is needed. It's really important because you control, again, how therapy's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing I'll bring up is the intake, just the intake process, all the paperwork and all the things that we will be asking you to fill out. It can be daunting. Hopefully, you have the paperwork ahead of time so that you can kind of fill those things out and put down your truth of what you're coming for, what your past looks like, and what you're hoping to get out of the session. All those things should be part of the paperwork, and it's a lot. So I encourage people to actually read it all. It talks about the limits of confidentiality. We have to discuss the things that we will keep everything confidential, but there are some things that we absolutely have to report. So all of that is spelled out in the limits of confidentiality, in addition to all of um, the processes of that practice, that place where you're going. It'll tell you the rules and regulations for making appointments and scheduling, who to schedule, how to schedule. So there's a lot involved in that paperwork.
Right. And we read your intake just like you read our bios. We read your intake so that we're familiar with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely, that's how we start to formulate how we might, help you in your counseling journey, is that we read what you write to us or for us. And then it helps us to kind of put things together. So, all right. So as we wrap up wrap up the session, is there anything, Doc, that you want to leave with people?
To not be afraid of therapy, you really do have much more control as far as the information, the interaction, your level of comfort. It's not about coming in and giving your life to a person and we fix it. It's about giving you the empowerment, like you said earlier, to become a better you. But you have to contribute in logistics and location and therapists and reading and being informative about your choices. Really important. Those things empower you to make a good choice so that when you do have therapy, it's not about being afraid of the process. It's looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you. All right. And we want to remind everyone, as always, to like, subscribe, and share. Share this video if you believe that it has been helpful for you and might be helpful for someone else. Please share and please subscribe. So this is our edition of The Empowered Mind. Thank you for listening and for checking in. Please leave your comments below and let us know if this was helpful. Let us know if there are topics that you would like us to discuss, and we will certainly bring those topics up and talk about them, because as always, we want you to be empowered in your counseling journey. We want you to be empowered in finding that right therapist. We want you to be empowered in life. So with that, thank you all so much. And Doc, I will see you for our next session.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.